So, my team is the Seattle Seahawks. I was surprised, like many this year, I didn't have a lot of high expectations whatsoever. There was a real spark for their success, as well as Geno Smith, who, of course, no one saw as Geno Smith playing like he played. I believe Geno Smith had the seventh best QBR. He had the highest completing percentage in the league this season. So Geno Smith, he also did this with two rookies on the offensive line. So I just think over the years with Geno, just him being able to sit back and learn, get better, see it from the slot, just able to actually go out there and perform. And then on top of that, you just had a defense who had a lot of rookies that played above their draft position. But throughout the season, the defense did certainly struggle. I do think they are so desperate for some talent up front. They really need some talent up front. But certainly, it's all about Geno right now for them. That's their big offseason question mark. I believe Geno is probably the second best free agent in this year's class if you prioritize quarterback, which most people do. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's number one. I think the Seahawks are going to try to do everything they can in their power to resign him. I'm hearing anywhere from 30 to 35 mil, which, of course, makes me a little nervous because we've talked about in the past how quarterbacks making such a high percent, it's so hard to get to the Super Bowl when you're making a certain high percent, unless you're Patrick Mahomes, which just happened this year. And unfortunately, I don't think Geno Smith or anybody else in the league is Patrick Mahomes. So I am a little nervous about his contract, but I would also say I don't think he'll get a long-term deal. He's already, 31, 32. So I believe the Seahawks are going to try to keep it to 2 to 3 million at most. And yeah, just going forward, it's exciting because the Seahawks have a lot of picks. Have 2 first-round picks as well as 2 second-round picks. So there will be question marks as far as do the Seahawks take a pick? Do they take a quarterback with pick number 5? There are 3 options that have kind of floated around. And for example, like Will Levis, he's usually the 3rd best QB. I know Efren's a big fan of him. So I could see the Seahawks, if Geno Smith asks for too much money, maybe they say, hey, let's give up on spending 30, 35 mil. We'll commit that money on the defensive side, pick Levis, maybe Stroud, maybe Bryce Young falls because of the size, although I doubt Bryce Young would ever fall to number 5. And so maybe the Seahawks pick a QB at number 5. But realistically, I just see them picking Geno Smith. And my hope is just that we pick a QB later in the rounds, someone like Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, who's a bit of an older prospect, but he could learn under Geno. I'm also a big fan of, I believe his name is Taylor McKee, or it's either Taylor McKee or Travis McKee from Stanford, 6'6", 5-star guy. Talented, but that Stanford offensive line was decimated this year. The receivers decimated this year, fired coach. So he didn't have a lot of talent. So I just think going forward for the Seahawks, it's all about the QB situation. And ideally, resign Geno, give him a couple years. Ideally at 5 to 30 mil. Hopefully you don't go above 30 mil. But that's my opinion on the Seahawks. They need a lot of talent.
They do. I would definitely agree with that. If they were to pick a quarterback with that 5th pick, who would you like them to take?
That's a good question. I think Bryce Young is special. I really do. But the problem is his size, man. His size is such a hindrance. It's such an issue, and he's so slight, right? He's so skinny, and you don't see QBs with his frame being very successful. I mean, you just don't, right? And so I could also see a situation where Pete Carroll doesn't want to have to scheme for a certain offense, right? Because now you have a guy who's not going to be consistently stay in the pocket. So I'm a little scared with him. So I think because of that, I think Stroud might be the safest, but I also admit, man, and we've all heard about that Ohio State history besides Justin Fields of Ohio State QBs just not producing very well at all. And, Will Levis, he has so much potential, but he struggled so much this season. But in fairness to him, the team he had, they weren't very good. Their offensive line was really bad. Their receivers from Kentucky weren't very good. He had a better season last year, but he had more talent around him last season, and I think he pressed a little bit. I know he was hurt. He was hurt this year as well. He had a thumb injury. So I mean, some people are saying that he could be Josh Allen. Like I know Kuiper really likes him, the guru.
Yeah,
So,
Kuiper does like him.
it's a tough call, man. It's a really tough call. That's why for me, I'd almost just rather go get your defensive talent, pick 5, and then get that Hendon Hooker, who I'm really high on in the late second, early third. That's a really good question, though. So if I had to pick those, they'll probably Stroud, because I just think he's been the most consistent because of his size. I don't think he's the best, though. Go ahead, Defrin.
But aren't you worried about his ACL tear?
Hendon Hookers?
Yes.
Hendon Hookers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a really good question. So that's why you would pick Hendon Hooker, assuming you re-sign Geno, right? Because Hendon Hooker, he's not going to be someone that's going to be playing right away, although he has came out and said that he thinks he's going to be ready for training camp. But to that point, you wouldn't draft Hooker thinking he's going to play right away, right? And so that's my thing. I want Geno Smith to get signed, and then in a perfect world, you draft a Hendon Hooker in the late second, early third, because I think that's where he's kind of in that range. And, I don't think Geno Smith, I love him, man, but in 3 years down the line, is he going to be that guy still? If he's not, now you have Hooker, who's been sitting ready and waiting, and honestly, too,
Like
I'm not sure how you
love kind of situation.
love kind of situation, but I'm not sure how you guys feel about this too. I'm a lot more comfortable having a second rounder, third rounder,
Or
sitting
even a third rounder. Yeah. Yeah.
than a first rounder. Yeah, he's more talented, but you have a first rounder that you're not using for 2-3 years down the line. So I'm intrigued by drafting his replacement in the late second, early third.
And there's even a couple of more guys that are out there that you could even go even later in the draft with, like the kid from Florida, or the one that I really am high on is the kid from Kansas State, because you're talking about the kid from Stanford. That kid at Kansas State is 6'6", 270, rifle arm, and and he can run the ball too. So
Alan, you can get that guy at Kansas State late. You cannot get that guy from Florida late. Anthony Richardson is who you're talking about.
Right.
About a guy with 5-star ability as far as his athleticism, his strength, his arm strength. He can do it all, but his accuracy leaves a lot to be desired, and his numbers, he definitely struggled this year. And if you're going to draft him, you're basically drafting him off potential. And if you've looked at a lot of the most mock drafts lately, everyone really has him in the first round now. He's
really?
Yes, it's crazy.
Wow.
I know he's climbed. He went from like a third rounder, late second rounder, as far as a month and a half ago, to people have the Panthers picking him at number 9 now. So
wow,
yeah,
We saw the combine. We saw the combine, and that can hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, you're right about that. There could be some changes to that because of the combine. And
the other thing too is that I understand you want Hooker, but I don't even think he's going to go second or third round. I'm not going to lie to you that him missing the combine, I don't think he's done it. I believe he did enough at Tennessee, but remember he transferred from Tennessee from Virginia Tech,
right?
So he didn't really have the same same success. I believe that. But also, wouldn't you? And this is me throwing this out there. Wouldn't you guys? I think would be a better fit for Lamar Jackson in Seattle to trade, and then use your draft picks to get him. I think Baltimore would want draft picks for him.
No. So no. At the end of the day, if you're Baltimore, right? You're not necessarily. If you're Baltimore, you're not obviously expecting to get a young, talented QB for Lamar, right? You're not. You're going to get draft picks, like you said, and if you're lucky, you can maybe get like a premier, young, talented guy, right? And so, for example, I'm not saying this would ever happen, so don't kill me, Efren, but like if the Cowboys, right, they would never trade Micah Parsons, for example, but like Diggs, for example. Let's say the Cowboys and Dak was going, or he was getting let go, right? The Cowboys could theoretically offer someone like Diggs and a first rounder to the Ravens. And so if you're the Ravens, you're getting an elite talent on top of a first rounder. But realistically, the Cowboys wouldn't probably want to do that, right? So they would offer the Ravens, 2 first, maybe 3 first, But at the end of the day, I agree. Like the Seahawks would be a great fit for Lamar. but I just don't know if I want it, man. I just think I want to rebuild with the draft picks. I just think we would have to trade a lot of our draft picks, and I don't think we have a talented roster just yet to take on a Lamar Jackson, if that makes sense. You know, like I don't think we're ready to win right away with Lamar, right? I think it would be at least a year away, you know? And because you're trading all your draft picks this year. Whereas at least with Geno, if you can get top 10 production, you still have your draft picks, right? And I don't think Geno obviously he's not Lamar, but you would still have your draft picks in that scenario.